The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this, I think it's Thursday, yes, Thursday evening. Looking forward to today's show. I hope you're all having a great week. Tomorrow I head off to the Einman Institute's student conference. So actually it's a conference, anybody can come in Atlanta, Georgia. I think there's still, if you live in the area, you still can show up. It costs something, but you can, I'm sure you can go on the website and get some tickets. It's going to be a great event. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll be flying out there tomorrow. So no shows tomorrow, no show on Saturday. I'll be back here 3 p.m. on Sunday. All right, today we're going to jump in, and basically we're going to do the whole show, however long it takes. Probably not that long. Talk about Jennifer is asking what the name of the song is at the beginning. I don't know. I have no idea. Today we're going to talk about Zuckerberg's testimony in front of Congress because, I mean, I think you know from previous shows that I've done that there are few things in the world, there are few things in life that infuriate me more than to watch a bunch of parasitic politicians, berate a productive businessman. Nothing pisses me off more than to see America's leading businessmen, whether from Silicon Valley or from Detroit or from Wall Street or from anywhere, brought up in front of Congress and required to answer stupid questions by people who have no clue what they're talking about and who have no business asking the questions. Have no business asking the questions because it's not in the purview of government to be involved in these kind of issues. As many of you know, I am a believer in a complete separation of church and state. But in this context, I'm a complete believer in separation of economy from state. I don't believe the state has any role in the economy because I believe the state, the government, only role is the protection of individual rights. And other than helping define property rights, and helping define what constitutes a violation of rights, and then helping arbitrate disputes in commercial areas, the government has no business in business. The government should be leaving business alone. And it's just the difference between the character of the people, the difference between what they actually do with their lives, between the politicians sitting up there lording over you. They sit up high, lording over you. People, for the most part, who've done nothing with their lives other than seek power. Lording over people who are productive, in many cases productive geniuses, who've changed the world, who've made the world a better place for hundreds of millions of people, who've done something with their lives, have used their reason, their mind, to improve their life, and by extension, to improve all of our lives. These are heroes. And I consider Mark Zuckerberg a hero in spite of my disagreements with him on politics, but I consider him a hero. What he's done to change the world, and indeed the stand he's taking right now on free speech, he's confused about it. He's wrong about it in many respects. But he is damn courageous to go out there on the road to defend it. And to defend it on principle. Now again, he doesn't quite get it. He doesn't understand the principle. And he doesn't understand the difference between government censorship and what Facebook does. And he doesn't understand a lot of things about free speech. And that's sad. But he's a productive genius. He's changed the world. He has 2.3 billion active accounts on Facebook. I mean, some of us have more than one account, but that is a big chunk of the global population who are using it because they get value out of it. You use it because you get value out of it. We can all complain and bitch about Facebook, But if you use it, you're basically indicating that you believe you're getting value out of it. How rational you are, I don't know. But your behavior suggests that that is what you at least think. Anyway, so we're going to look at some of the testimony. We're going to look primarily at the questions of the Congress people, and I'm going to get angry, and it'll be fun. And I've chosen the most outrageous comments. They're all Democrats, unfortunately, because the media has spliced up just the ridiculous Democratic questions. Republicans asked a lot of ridiculous questions. Republicans were not supportive, but I haven't got spliced up the little segments. And the testimony, get this. Here's a guy who's running a company with tens of thousands of employees that affects the lives of 1 billion people. And he spent 6 hours in front of these losers. 6 hours having to defend his company. Now, supposedly, the testimony was supposed to be about the proposal that Facebook has to establish a currency, a cryptocurrency, that will be used, that you could use on their platform. Now, the idea is that there's a whole consortium that is going to develop this currency and distribute this currency. And you could use it not just on Facebook, you could use it elsewhere, and other people have bought in. There are 21 companies as part of this consortium. It's called the Libra Foundation. And by the way, there's a white paper that describes the whole Libra project that you can find online. So it's very transparent, or at least somewhat transparent in terms of what they want to do. It's called Libra. It's a cryptocurrency, and I'm not going to try to explain what cryptocurrency is, but it's basically an electronic wallet that you would have. You'll be able to buy and sell anonymously if you want, but the currency will be backed, unfortunately not by gold, I wish, but it will be backed by a basket of assets, primarily bank deposits, currencies, a variety of different currencies, short-term government bonds, things like that basically guarantee that every Libra can be then exchanged for dollars or for euros or for yen or for whatever currency you want. And then you'll have this wallet with, let's say, $100 worth of Libra, and then you'll be able to go on Facebook and use it to transact. And I think this is a precursor to Facebook getting into competition with Amazon and getting into competition with Google and trying to get you to stay on their platform by selling your products on the platform and by increasing the interaction that happens on the platform. It's not a secret that Facebook views Google as its competition. Facebook views Amazon as its competition, just like Google views Facebook and Amazon. These are all companies that are competing for your eyeballs, and what they want is not just to sell you stuff. They want you to search on their platform. They want you to use their currency ultimately. I wouldn't be surprised if Google is looking at some kind of cryptocurrency to be used and some kind of crypto wallet to be used. It's safe, relatively much safer than using a credit card. It's anonymous. You'll be able to buy stuff without the ability to people to track what you're buying. And then you'll be able to exchange it into a currency that you want. So it won't be just some floating thing. It's basically like checks order to money, to currency, but here it will be electronic and anonymous. I mean, it's really cool. I would use this. I think everybody would use this. You'd much rather, instead of having to put your credit card number in or knowing that your credit card is there with all the information, have this secure, encrypted wallet where you could pay in dollar denominated. It'd be in Libra denominated, but you'd be able to translate it into dollars whenever you want. And it would be cool. It would be pretty amazing. I mean, this is the promise. Part of what the internet promises us is this ability to be able to buy stuff really, really easy and really, really fast. Thomas says cash is secure. Sure, it's secure, but I can't use cash to buy from Amazon. And I love Amazon, and I buy tons of stuff from Amazon. And I'd like to be able to buy stuff from Amazon without a third party knowing who bought it, right? So, look, and one of the interesting things in his testimony is, Zuckerberg says, I actually don't know if Libra is going to work. That's a direct quote, right? I mean, he's an entrepreneur. He's starting something new. He's starting something innovative. He's putting it out there. Maybe customers will hate it. Maybe everybody is like Thomas and likes to go to the local grocery store and pick up his vegetables that were grown in a plot of land next door. But, I mean, I would never do that. I can't get GMO locally. I want my GMO products shipped to me. I want them shipped in a high carbon emitting airplane efficiently to my doorstep. I want it coming in a package, and I want to be able to cook it in my made in China microwave or whatever, right? I want efficiency, but the market will determine. That's the beauty of these things. The market will decide. So Zuckerberg, they put together this whole plan. They've got this whole organization to launch this. It's a massive risk because it could turn out to be a complete dud. It could turn out to be a complete failure, and nobody knows, right? That's the whole idea of entrepreneurship and risk-taking. And it's a new type of venture. It's going to be heavily regulated. They're not going to get around regulation. So they're going to have to abide by a million regulations. And Zuckerberg, unfortunately, kept saying during the hearing, yes, we're going to abide by the regulations. Yes, we won't launch it until the regulators approve it. Yes, 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 yes. But it has the potential to really enhance the ability of people all over the world, not just us Americans, but all over the world, to have money online that they can then go and purchase stuff. We're talking about billions of people who don't have bank accounts, who don't have checks, who don't have credit cards, might have the ability then to exchange their cash for Libra, and then the Libra into cash, and use that Libra online like all of us do, all of us who are civilized do in a civilized world, where we buy stuff from Amazon, from whatever your favorite supplier of goods online is, right? And this is progress. This is beauty. This is what it means to move the world forward. This is what it means to improve our fate. This is what people like Zuckerberg do or try to do. And then if they do something and it fails, then they fail. It's their money. They lose it. So first, the very idea that he has to come in front of Congress to justify this. But it turns out that there's massive opposition to Libra. The central banks don't like it because now it is a competing currency. They don't want competition. They have a monopoly over currency. Now, it's not really competition because it's backed by their currency. But still, you don't use dollars. They don't get to track your transactions. You know why why the central bankers in a lot of countries now want to get you to move off of cash? Because they want to be able to track everything that you do financially. They want to be able to track all of your transactions. And they want to make sure that you pay all your taxes. So central bankers want to be able to track everything that you do. This would get around that, and this could become, and I think they know this because of Facebook's economic power, this could become big. This could involve a significant number of global transactions. Could be involved here. Right? This is, again, any electronic means in which you can buy stuff more efficiently is an amazing and beautiful thing. Let me be really clear, because I think Thomas in the chat is not clear. I don't believe in buying local. I don't believe in going to a grocery store. I believe in buying efficiently from whatever place in the world makes it most productively and at the cheapest cost and at the highest quality. That's what I believe. And this makes that possible. I love technology. I love innovation. I love progress. I love moving forward. So central banks oppose this. And there's been a lot, Powell, the Fed chairman, has come out in strong opposition to this. The administration has come out against it. This is one area where Trump and Powell agree. Trump has said that this is a bad thing. Mnuchin, his Treasury Secretary, has come out against it. European regulators have come out against it. So across the entire spectrum, we're seeing massive amount of pressure from Congress, from Congress, from the White House, and for central banks, and from European regulators against this idea. And again, you don't like it, don't use it. And what I'm hoping is that Facebook has a currency, Google has a currency, Amazon has a currency, other people, maybe Citibank, well, maybe not Citibank, I don't like Citibank. Bank of America has a currency, and we all compete. And then one day we wake up and maybe one of them does this. One of them does this. One of them actually backs it by gold. So imagine you issued a currency today. One of these companies issues a cryptocurrency and backs it up by gold. Then you're risking truly shaking up the global monetary system and maybe even replacing the role of central banks completely, which is the real hope of what technology can make possible. If these currencies are backed by something real, and in this case, I think the best thing to back them up is gold. So let's have competition in currencies, which is what I believe in. So I think it's a beautiful project, and I hope it takes off. But it's got this massive opposition from everybody in power. I'm sure the banks don't like this. Certainly, again, White House doesn't like it, Congress doesn't like it, and Europe doesn't like it. Now, one of the things to note is that something similar to this already exists, but it exists in China. WeChat is one of the most innovative companies in the world. It is basically a platform that combines Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, Google, and a payment system. And it's WhatsApp with everything else. And it's an amazingly efficient way to transact. And in that sense, WeChat is way ahead of anything we have in the United States in terms of our ability to use the internet, to communicate, and to efficiently transact, move money from person to person. If I want to send somebody money, we have to go into another, app like PayPal or like Venmo and use those in order to transact. But imagine if it was in your Facebook already, or imagine if it was in your Amazon. Imagine if it was in one of those accounts and you could just do it. Now the iPhone has started to introduce like a Apple Pay where you can transact money. It's all geared towards efficiency. Life is going to be so amazingly efficient in 20, 30 years if we allow innovation to progress. That is stunning and amazing. And we will be looking back, blown away at how primitive our payment systems is. And one of the things that Zuckerberg said in his opening statement to Congress is financial industry has been relatively stagnant. There has been little innovation when it comes to these kind of things. So he's going to innovate. This is fantastic. Anyway, everybody's opposed it. So already from the consortium, which included, by the way, two of the major credit card companies, they have left the consortium. A number of other companies have left the consortium, and they've left the consortium because of the political pressure, because of the political pressure on Facebook and Libra to do away with this, to back away from this product, which they consider evil and bad. All right, so Zuckerberg comes in front of Congress. Why should he be in front of Congress? I don't know, right? Why does he need permission? See, imagine if Edison had come in front of Congress to seek permission to launch an electricity company. Imagine if the Wright brothers had come before Congress to ask permission to innovate flight. Imagine if IBM had come in front of Congress asking for permission to, create computers. We'd still be living 250 years ago. We'd still be subsistence farmers if we left it up to politicians to give permission. This is Soviet Union. This is statism. This is the government controlling what entrepreneurs do and don't do, how capitalists invest their money and don't invest their money. So, but we live in a world in which Zuckerberg feels like he has to come in front of Congress to explain himself. And partially I think it's pressure, right? Partially I think it's pressure from the other members of the consortium who are getting pressure from politicians, and they're saying, Zuckerberg, you have to go and do a campaign, right? In order to, a public campaign in order to get politicians off our backs, right? And I think that's why he goes to Congress. Greg tells me that you can already transfer money in Facebook Messenger. I think the difference is not only is this their own currency, this is anonymous, and it won't just allow you to transfer money, it'll allow you to buy stuff, it'll allow you to do many, many, many other things. Imagine if there's a currency built into Facebook and other people are also accepting this currency. It really is competition to bankers, to the central bankers. All right, so he comes in front of Congress to talk about Libra, to talk about a currency. Now, let me say first that I have a strong belief, based, I think, on fact, that 90% of the people sitting in front of him have no idea what a cryptocurrency is, have no idea what Libra could do, have no idea what the hell he's talking about, and don't really care. They don't really care. They're in the pockets of entrenched pressure groups already. They've got their constituency. They've got the people they represent. They've got the people who give them $100,000 a lecture to get access to them. These are supposedly not ignorant people in Congress. These are the people who are in the House Financial Services Committee. So these are the people who most know about the financial world in Washington. People like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who we know from her work as a bartender is amazingly qualified to judge the efficacy of an alternative currency, amazingly qualified to judge whether something is truly competitive with banks and to judge whether one should allow for financial innovation and financial progress, because she, like everybody else in this committee, are so knowledgeable about finance, are so knowledgeable about what this means. And we'll see the kind of questions they ask. And you'll tell me what you think about their knowledge. I mean, as you'll see, they don't ask questions about Libra to a large extent because they don't know anything about it. They wouldn't know where to start. They have no conception of what we're talking about. And then the Republicans. Now, all the clips I have, unfortunately, are from Democrats. But, and by the way, when you see these clips, you will understand why Donald Trump can beat them. You will understand why the American people have such a hard time voting for these people at a national level. I mean, when I saw this, and I guess you could see this every day in Congress, but when I saw this, it was one of the most pathetic displays I've ever seen. And we're going to see that. So, Republicans said all kinds of stuff like, like, you're going to use this is going to be used for fraud, why would we trust you? You're a monopoly, we don't want to give you more power. That's the Republican side. But the Democrats, it was just too much. All right, so the chair of the House Finance Services Committee is Waters, Maxime Waters, another highly qualified member of the House Finance Committee. But she's the chair. It makes me miss Bonnie Frank, who at least I think had some minor experience in these kind of issues. Whoops, let me just I have to sign on something here. It was really horrible, but at least had some experience in finance, right? I mean, as a politician, not as an actual productive member of society. God forbid. No, you can't have that. So we're going to start with Maxime Waters. This is right off the bat. He's made his opening statement. The opening statement is basically about Libra and why he thinks it's good and why it's going to make the world a better place and why it's good for the poor and why it'll make the world more efficient. And just watch this. Oh, let me switch the screens. All right, that's Mark Zuckerberg in front of remember this is the House Financial Services Committee. It's broadcast on C-SPAN. And I apologize for the frames. I've picked this up from people who've clipped it out of YouTube, in Twitter. I can't watch the whole 6 hours. I've watched big bits of the 6 hours, and I watched enough to know that these clips are not taken out of context. And there's enough of the clips, you're going to hear several minutes of them, to know that. But, these are the kind of clips I could find that are kind of representative of what's going on here. So, unbelievable. Listen carefully.
First on diversity and inclusion.
Whoa, wait a minute. Hold on, time out. Weren't we talking about Libra? Cryptocurrency? Changing the world? Making the world a better place for users of Facebook and generally people all over the world, and Zuckerberg emphasized the benefits to poor. He has to. I mean, he has to play up to the altruism, but inclusion and diversity.
Facebook has utterly failed. Facebook's executive ranks and workforce continue to be mostly white and male. Since Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition called upon Silicon Valley companies, including Facebook, to release its diversity statistics more than 5 years ago, the representation of African Americans and Hispanics has increased by less than 2%. Facebook also told us that they have $0 managed by diverse firms.
Unbelievable. Facebook has failed. Facebook is a horrible company. It has failed. Why? Because it hasn't met Maxime Waters' standards for what diversity looks like. Not only don't they have a diverse employee base, but they also don't have a diverse, investment management team. I mean, every aspect of every company now has to qualify by some standard that Jesse Jackson determines of what diversity looks like. To hell with, have you changed the world? To hell with, have you made the lives of people better? To hell with, what are you doing? This is what they're talking about?
On fair housing. Facebook has been sued by the National Fair Housing Alliance for enabling advertisers to engage in discrimination on its advertising platforms. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has also filed an official charge of discrimination against Facebook for its advertising practices, including the company's own ad delivery algorithms, which were found to have a discriminatory impact when advertisers did not target their audience in discriminatory ways.
So the algorithm is discriminating, not just the advertising is discriminating, now the algorithms are discriminating. I mean, I know conservatives, think the algorithms discriminate against them. Minorities think the algorithms discriminate against them. I mean, I think the algorithms discriminate against me. I mean, I should have hundreds of thousands of likes on Facebook, and I don't, and obviously they discriminate against me. Facebook discriminates against everybody, and it's all in the algorithms. Does she even know what an algorithm is? And I don't mean as an insult to Representative Walters, I think this is to all congressmen. Do they even know what an algorithm is? Could they specify an algorithm? Have they ever seen an algorithm? I mean, again, I emphasize, these are politicians who've done nothing. And we're supposed to be talking about a cryptocurrency. What does this have anything to do with it? Nothing. But you'll see none of the comments by congressmen that I've got for you have anything to do with Libra, the cryptocurrency.
I understand that Facebook has refused to cooperate with HUD's fair housing investigation by refusing to provide relevant data. On competition and fairness, Facebook is the subject of an antitrust investigation by the first on.
So yes, Facebook is indeed under investigation by the I think 46, 47 attorney generals and the Justice Department for antitrust violations. They hate Facebook and they want to break it up. And indeed, this is one of the few topics the Democrats and Republicans agree on. They all want to go after Facebook. Now, I'd never seen Representative Al Green, I guess, before. Maybe I have, but I didn't pay attention to him. But this is off the charts. So this makes Maxine Waters seem rational. Listen to this.
That the Libra Association oversees the Libra project?
Congressman, yes.
And is it true that global corporations make up the association?
Global corporation, code word for those powerful corporations that make a lot of money and control the world and try to influence everything that we do.
Congressman, the association is made of, today, 21 companies and nonprofit organizations as well.
Of the 21, how many are headed by women?
I mean, I was expecting some deep question about conflict of interest, I don't know, about currencies, about finance, about their knowledge of finance. No, how many of them are headed by women? This is what's important. This, in our day and age, this is what's important to the Democratic Party. This is why so many Americans, in spite of how nutty and irrational and immoral and you know, this president is, Trump is, in spite of that, they might vote for him because this attitude that the Democrats have is so laughable and so intolerable. Now, and I've done shows about women are treated badly and you know, all of, you know, the roots of feminism, where it comes from, and the fact that it was a legitimate, and, you know, and racism and all of that. But this is just absurd. And again, you're wasting the time of one of the most productive people on planet Earth to ask him how many women run. I mean, how does Mark Zuckerberg have the patience? And how isn't he rolling around laughing? And why, and this is the real question, why doesn't he have the moral backbone and the moral courage to stand up and tell them to go to hell, all of them, just to go to hell?
Congressman, I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I can get it for you.
Well, I believe you can get it, Mr. Zuckerberg, but one would assume that you would know who heads these corporations that are going to be running this global company.
You mean Mark Zuckerberg doesn't have a tally in his head on how many of the companies he associates with are run by women? It gets better.
How many of them are minorities, Mr. Zuckerberg?
Congressman, I do not know off the top of my head.
Really, I mean, anybody who cares about race, anybody who's a racist, should keep an ongoing tally of how many of the different races that are actually running companies. I mean, that's what you should do. You should tally these things up in your head, and you should always be prepared, particularly when you're going when you're going to give a presentation about your new exciting venture, your new exciting way to change the world called Libra?
Any members of the LGBTQ plus community?
I wonder if maybe Mark can send out a questionnaire to all the members of the Libra Association with and asking them about their sexual preferences. How do you think that would go along? You think that would be a good idea? A sexual preference questionnaire, also about maybe all of Facebook employees, so that he can give an exact number?
Associated with this association, Mr. Zuckerberg?
Congressman, I don't know the answer.
Who acknowledge? There are many people who acknowledge that they are a part of the community.
They wear it on their forehead. They announce it, not just acknowledge it, they advertise it. I mean, really? CEOs of major corporations who happen to be lesbian, gay, maybe there are a lot of them, I'm sure. But you should be able to know this and be able to tally it. I mean, it's nuttiness. It's insanity. And this is what Congress is doing. This is the job, Congress. This is what we send our taxpayer money for these clowns, to interrogate a businessman about how many of his business associates are LGBTQ.
Sorry?
You do not know. Mr. Zuckerberg, is it true that the overwhelming majority of persons associated with this endeavor are white men?
Congressman, I don't know off the top of my head the list of the people who are running the organizations in the association.
Is it?
What do you say to that? I mean, it is so nutty. It is so insane that I don't know where you go with this. Again, I'm the first one to be willing, and I get harassed here on my chat constantly about the fact that, yes, there's been and there is discrimination against all kinds of people out there. And we should all be aware of that. And rational people don't discriminate over things that are not significant and not essential. And we should judge people when they discriminate. But it's none of the government's business. And it's certainly none of the government's business to put this at the forefront of everything. We're going to keep going, because that's not all. It keeps going. All right. This is Representative Ayanna Pressley, another member of the House Financial Services Committee.
The same World Bank report cited in your Libra white paper finds that almost 2/3 of 1.7 billion people who don't have bank accounts say it's because they lack enough money to open one. So this is not about authentication. This is not about banking costs. This is about a tsunami of hurt that millions are experiencing because of a $1.6 trillion student debt crisis.
Now this is good, right? So he started out he made his whole presentation about how this is going to help the poor. And good for Presley. She's calling him on it. She said, poor people, there are other reasons they're poor. It's not because, now she's lying, because actually facilitating a better mechanism for them to be able to transact actually makes their life better. But she's calling on him on the altruism. And I actually had a different clip of her. Let's see if this is what I wanted at the end here, where she asked him this funny question.
Children's inheritance in Libra.
Oh, yeah. Listen to this.
What is inherently an issue of wealth. At the end of the day, you are a business. So what is in the business interest for you here? And do you believe in what you are building? Do you believe in what you are building?
Congresswoman, yes.
Now note this question. This is such a disgusting question to ask. He's already said this is a risky proposition. He's already said it doesn't know if it'll work. And this is what a congresswoman asks.
So yes or no, would you leave behind your children's inheritance in Libra?
What relevance does that have to anything? Isn't he already leaving his children's inheritance behind in Facebook? This is an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs who start new businesses can't guarantee the results. They can't guarantee the success. But he's already investing his wealth through Facebook in establishing this thing. But, wow.
Congresswoman,
Do you believe in what you're building?
yes, I do. And
Would
it's,
you leave behind your children's
Call her on
inheritance in Libra? I think it's a fair question because
I think it's
you've proven that we cannot trust you with our emails, with our phone numbers. So why should we trust you with our hard-earned money?
well, Congresswoman,
Reclaiming my time. If you can't answer yes or no, would you leave behind your children's inheritance in Libra?
Yeah, she doesn't let him answer the question. She doesn't let him answer the question. It's just so disgusting. Right? So disgusting. All right, two more. Representative Katie Porter. Wow. All right, listen to this.
Facebook's known as a great place to work, free food, ping pong tables, great employee benefits, but Facebook doesn't use its hardest jobs in the company. You've got about 15,000 contractors watching murders, stabbings, suicides, other gruesome, disgusting videos for content moderation, correct?
Congresswoman, yes, I believe that that's correct.
You pay many of those workers under $30,000 a year, and you've cut them off from mental health care when they leave the company, even if they have PTSD because of their work for your company.
So now the issue is not Libra, it's not diversity, it's the way Facebook treats its contract employees, employees that don't have to work there, employees that can get a different job, employees that have chosen voluntarily to be there, employees that, you know, it's a horrible job. They watch all this awful stuff that Facebook screens out. They watch, you know, borderline stuff that they have to decide, they have to make decisions about whether to put it on the platform or not. This is the people who do a lot of the screening. A lot of it's for sex and violence and other things. And she's complaining about their work conditions.
Is that correct?
Congresswoman, my understanding is we pay everyone, including the contractors associated with the company, at least a $15 minimum wage. And in markets and in cities where there's a high cost of living, that's a $20 minimum wage. We go out of our way
Thank
to
you.
offer
I
a lot
take
of
your word at the
mental
wage.
health.
Reclaiming my time.
He shouldn't, you see, they won't even let him answer, right? Claiming my time means I'm going to speak, shut up. They won't let him answer. She doesn't care about the answer. He won't fight, he won't really fight back. He will just give this dry, but he shows no moral indignation. I mean, imagine if they stood up, if he stood up.
According to one report I have, and this is straight out of an episode of Black Mirror, these workers get nine minutes of supervised wellness time per day. That means 9 minutes to cry in the stairwell while somebody watches them. Would you be willing to commit to spending 1 hour a day for the next year watching these videos and acting as a content monitor and only accessing the same benefits available to your workers?
Now, the answer you should give to this is, lady, my time is way too valuable to spend at something like that. This would not be good for the shareholders. It would not be good for me. It would not be good for anybody. I am way too productive to do that kind of work.
Congresswoman, we work hard to make sure that we give good benefits to all the folks who are doing this.
Mr. Zuckerberg, reclaiming my time, I would appreciate a yes or a no. Would you be willing to act as a content monitor?
Again, yes or no, right? They don't want
Have that
answers.
life experience.
I'm not sure that it would best serve our community for me to spend that much
Reclaiming
time.
my time. Mr.
But
Zuckerberg,
I spend a lot of time
reclaiming my
looking at this
time.
content.
See, she won't let him finish the answer. And of course, he does say it wouldn't serve our community best. Now, you know, again, the Weasley words that he uses. But just think about what she's asking him. Would you be willing to be the janitor for the day? How about you one day a week work as a janitor? I mean, Words escape me. The outrage is so intense. All right, here we go. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is part of the financial committee. Again, she has all the qualifications, we know. She is I think he got a number of degrees. No, I mean, she knows nothing. But let's listen to her grilling him. Again, the whole point of this is to discuss Libra, a cryptocurrency. Now, she is going to ask questions about an important topic, but not relevant to Libra. Now, she's going to ask questions about an important topic, which she is wrong about. Now, this video actually went viral. Everybody was praising her, how wonderful she is, how amazing she was. You judge.
Recently, that the official policy of Facebook now allows politicians to pay to spread disinformation.
Notice the official policy of Facebook is not to fact check political ads. But that's not what she says. She says that the policy of Facebook is to allow politicians to spread disinformation. Disinformation. That's how she phrases it. It is so dishonest.
In 2020 elections and in the future. So I just want to know how far I can push this in the next year. Under your policy, using census data as well, could I pay to target predominantly black zip codes and advertise them the incorrect election date?
No, Congresswoman, you couldn't.
Now notice, Zuckerberg gives a really good answer, I think a good answer here.
We have, even for these policies around the newsworthiness of content that politicians say and the general principle that I believe that...
But you said you're not going to fact check my ads.
We have, if anyone, including a politician, is saying things that that is calling for violence or could risk imminent physical harm or voter or census suppression when we roll out the census suppression policy, we will take that content down.
So he's basically saying, you can say whatever you want in a political ad, and Google and Facebook is now emphasizing this. They're not fact-checking political ads, which I think is great, which is the right policy. But they're saying, but there's certain things that are not acceptable. Political ads around elections, if you're going to provide disinformation about the logistics of the election, if you're going to preach violence, if you're going to advocate for violence, those we will take down. So he's making a nuanced differentiation between those things. But she can't handle that.
There is some threshold where you will fact check political advertisements. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, Congresswoman, yes, for specific things like that, where there's imminent risk of harm.
Could I run ads
Again, won't let him talk.
targeting Republicans in primaries saying that they voted for the Green New Deal?
Sorry,
Yeah, she could.
Can you repeat that?
Would I be able to run advertisements on Facebook targeting Republicans in primaries saying that they voted for the Green New Deal? I mean, if you're not fact-checking political advertisements, I'm just trying to understand the bounds here. What's fair game?
Congresswoman, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I think
So you don't know if I'll be able to do that?
I think probably.
Do you see a potential problem here with a complete lack of fact-checking on political advertisements?
Well, Congresswoman, I think lying is bad, and I think if you were to run an ad that had a lie, that would be bad. That's different from it being, for in our position, the right thing to do to prevent your constituents or people in an election from seeing that you had lied.
I mean, really? They want, and it's not just them, it's across the political spectrum, they want Facebook to evaluate political ads and decide what is true and what is not. Now, by my standards, I think Andrew Yang put out a thing about, Facebook should do this fact checking online. And my perspective is, if you did that properly, if you did that, really, in terms of political ads, there would be no political ads. Because they all lie all the time. I mean, think about the amount of misrepresentation in political advertising. And what Zuckerberg is saying, he's saying in a polite way, he's saying is, if you lie, then your constituency should see that you lie and should penalize you for lying. It's not Facebook's job to determine whether you lie or not. It's the voters' job to figure out whether you're lying or not. And that's absolutely right. This is completely on the voters, not on Facebook. But a number of people followed up on this. This wasn't just AOC. A number of people went after Zuckerberg about this idea that Facebook is now not going to fact check political ads. I don't know if they ever did, but they certainly are not going to fact check political ads by politicians. By third parties, maybe, particularly if they're fake accounts, but they're not paid political ads by politicians are not going to be imagine if they got into the business of fact checking those. Imagine the hysteria if one of AOC's ads was determined by Facebook to be inappropriate. Imagine what would happen. I mean, all hell would break loose. All right, let's hear the final.
So you won't take down lies, or you will take down lies? I think this is just a pretty simple yes or no.
Congresswoman,
I'm not talking about spin. I'm talking about actual
yes, in most cases, in a democracy,
and the difference
I
is?
believe that people should be able to see for themselves
Good
what
answer.
politicians that they may or may not vote for
So
are
you
saying,
won't take
judge
them
their
down.
character for themselves.
So you won't take, you may flag that it's wrong, but you won't take it
They
down.
won't even flag it.
Congresswoman, it depends on the context that it shows up. Organic post ads,
Right.
the treatment is a little
One
bit
question, one more question.
Yeah, I mean, that's Congress for you. That's who we elect to represent us. That's the people out there who are, what can you say? Who are trying to protect our individual rights. And notice the tone. Notice the condescension. Notice the attitude, right? Right? Notice the attitude that these people have. So Andrew Yang posted this on Twitter. Facebook taking accountability for the truth of political ads on its platform would be a real boost to our democracy. They're closer to a cable network than a broadcast network and have the discretion to act if they so choose. I hope they step up. Really? I wrote on Twitter, now granted, these are tweets. In recent times, has there been a truthful political ad? Really? And I'm including your ads and statements here. That's referring to Andrew. And who gets to decide anyway? Should we have a council of truth to dictate which ads run and which don't? Should we have Republicans or Democrats on this council? Or maybe so-called independents? Yes, truth is always the purview of councils, committees, majorities. Maybe leave it up to voters to catch you at your lies. I mean, it truly is stunning to me that they can get away with this with almost no backlash, with almost no response. And I have to tell you, as skeptical I am of the stuff that Facebook has done and is doing, I think they've got some real business challenges. And Zuckerberg, I wish he had different political views. I wish he stood up for himself and Sean. I mean, relative to these leeches, and I'm sorry, I'm calling them like this and politicians, but I've had it with them. I mean, Zuckerberg is like a saint. I mean, I wish he went for president. I'd vote for him over any of these people. And again, I'm not advocating for Zuckerberg to be president. I think he'd probably be a terrible president. But, I mean, he's a real producer. He's a world changer. And they are nobodies. And as you saw, nothings. And, that was representative. I mean, yeah, I'm sure I picked the most outrageous ones. But yeah, all they wanted to talk about was diversity, was political ads, speech, discrimination on the platform to conservatives, They want to talk about the hacking, the privacy issues. Almost nothing about what they were there to actually do, which is discuss Libra, discuss this innovation. Maybe that's a good thing. Because then, maybe if they focus on all this stuff, they won't notice when stuff gets innovated. Unfortunately, there's no way to launch something like Libra without support of the regulators. And Facebook is working with the Treasury Department and other regulatory agencies, the Fed, to try to figure out how to launch this. But we already know that the people at the head of the Treasury and the people at the head of the Federal Reserve oppose this. So how are we going to get innovation in the financial industry? I do not know, when these clowns are the people who actually make decisions about the future of finance. The only hope I have is that the people at the actual agencies are better. And I'm sure they are. They at least know finance. And I'm sure many of them are not very concerned with how many LGBTQ CEOs there are. How many of the companies managed by LGBTQ CEOs, as Representative Green seemed to be so concerned about. All right, we've got a couple of Super Chat questions. We'll take those, and I'm open to others if you'd like to ask about pretty much anything. Ryan asks, how do we get a copy of Atlas Shrugged in Zuck's hands? You can visibly see how morally confused he is. He needs Rand so badly. He does. I mean, he really, really, really does. And I wish it was as simple as getting him Atlas Shrugged, because, man, imagine a CEO armed with Atlas Shrugged, armed with an understanding of Atlas Shrugged, what he would do at a hearing like that. And it would be world-changing, because everybody's watching and everybody's hearing and everybody's engaged, and you could have such an impact. It would truly be world-changing in a way that nothing else we could do, I think, would be. I have a feeling Zuckerberg has read Atlas Shrugged. If he hasn't read Atlas Shrugged, he has had at least one senior executive close to him recommend Atlas Shrugged. I know an objectivist who for a long time worked closely, was very senior at Facebook and had many interactions with Zuckerberg, and I think, and Zuckerberg knew that he was an Ayn Rand fan and knew who Ayn Rand was and knew what that meant, at least to some extent. At least this is what he tells me. And look, we know, for example, that people like Mike Milken have read Atlas Shrugged and are fans of Atlas Shrugged, not just read it. I'm pretty sure Bill Gates has read Atlas Shrugged. We have a good, reason to believe that Steve Jobs read Atlas Shrugged. We know Larry Ellison read Atlas Shrugged. We know that Sam McNeely, who founded Sun Microsystems, read Atlas Shrugged. We know that the founder of Uber read The Fountainhead. And I'd say, of all those people, the only person who it seems to have affected him in the sense of being willing to stand up is the guy from Uber. And of course, we know what happened to him before he started the company, but he also did some other bad things. But it hasn't affected it that way. They read Atlas Shrugged and they didn't respond to Gold's speech the way the heroes in the novel respond to Gold's speech. They didn't respond to Gold's speech by saying, yes, I get it, and now I'm morally committed. They were inspired by Atlas Shrugged. Every one of the tech entrepreneurs that I've talked to, and I've talked to many who were inspired by Atlas Shrugged, but they don't get it qua philosophy. They don't get it qua something that should guide their life. They don't get it as a morality, as a code of morality, as a basis on which to plant their flag and to stand and to give them a spine. They just don't get it as that. They don't give up on the altruism. And you're right. It's horrible to watch because they are so morally torn. And you know what they could say and what they should say if they had the knowledge and the courage But it's the knowledge, the deep knowledge, not just the superficial knowledge, but deep knowledge of what that morality really means and what these people are asking them to do. They're asking them to betray everything they believe in. I mean, some of those questions were so nutty. And yeah, I think Zuckerberg did as well as he could under the circumstances, and the people writing in the papers and stuff gave him relatively good reviews because he kept his cool, he answered the questions, he didn't try to appease them. They come out of these clips looking like idiots, which they are. But imagine how much more we could do with them all certainty. And yes, the great tragedy of our time is that the great movers and shakers of our time, whether intellectuals or business leaders, do not take Ayn Rand seriously. Do not take Ayn Rand seriously. Gail asks, is it truly the epistemology? And that is, I assume what you're saying is the reason they don't take, they can't get Ayn Rand, the epistemology? Is that what you're asking, Gail? That they don't, is it their epistemology? I mean, maybe. But remember, these are people with a relatively good epistemology. You can't be a successful entrepreneur. You can't manage tens of thousands of people, a complex company, without having a decent epistemology, without having some knowledge and without using reason, and without having some ability, significant ability to think logically and to elevate your reason above your emotions. So I think that epistemology is relatively healthy. No, I mean, I think the thing that makes it so hard for people to take Atlas Shrugged seriously is ethics. It's the altruism. And I mean, this is a difficult question. And their sense of life. And part of it is a certain arrogance of, I don't need this. You know, I'm going to live a great life. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to have everything. And I don't need it. And you would think, and also a certain philosophical honesty about what they know and what they don't know, and maybe psychological honesty about how they're doing. Because I think that in a situation where we face Congress like that, I mean, one of the things that should have come to his mind is, I'm flailing here. I need guidance. I need better ideas to be able to combat the irrationality that I'm seeing in front of me. There has to be a better world. So I succeeded without these bastards. But now it's like Dagny, right? It's like Dagny. Dagny's like, no. I can still succeed. I can still be successful. Yes, these people are idiots, but I can ignore them. And not until she gets the nihilism, she gets that she is facilitating the world's destruction by, working and by innovating and by moving forward, that she is supporting these people and what their real goal is, which a good person can't get. Only then, even Dagny, who's way better than any of these guys. Of course, she's a fictional character. Even Dagny has a hard time, standing up to them fully, right? Walking away. So he thinks like Dagny, look, I've got my business. I'm really good at it. I don't need these people for my business. I just need to get them out of the way. I'll do what they say in order to get them out of the way, and I'll run my business. So that's part of it, right? So he doesn't see the need. Yeah, they're a hassle, but he's smart enough, and it's the Silicon Valley attitude. He's smart enough, and he's productive enough, and his innovations are important enough that he's going to get by them. But there's a psychological element. How honest is he about his own psychology? Because you can see how this must be eating away at him. This must be destroying him inside. But then there's the altruism, which none of these guys, I don't know what it is about altruism. And I have to, because I was an explicit altruist before I read Ayn Rand. And I had committed myself to altruism. And I recognized that what I was doing was, I mean, to some extent, I had come to the conclusion that what I was doing was not completely logical, but I couldn't see an alternative. There was no out for me. Altruism was it. If you wanted to be moral, altruism was all you could be. And I was raised with collectivism as altruism and altruism as deeply ingrained in the culture and in everything around me. But as soon as I read Atlas Shrugged, the revelation, I mean, Atlas Shrugged, for me, I mean, I know Rand's view, it's all of the mind. But for me, it's about egoism and altruism, right? That's what hit me. That's what changed my life. And then it was economics, and then I went back to epistemology. But for whatever reason, altruism has a grip on people that is just unbelievably strong. And maybe it's the fact that they're also arrogant and they have a certain level, which I was not. I don't think I was arrogant at 16. I think I was cocky and stupid and all kinds of things. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know whether I was going to be successful. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about the future. I mean, I wasn't that kind of. And you know, people, you always get the question, who did you relate to most? Which character did you relate to most when you read Atlas Shrugged? And I have to admit, I'm really suspicious of anybody who says John Galt. Like, particularly if they're young. Like, really? I mean, Galt was like God. It was like this ideal that maybe one day I could maybe come close to, right? But I'm also find it amazing that people tell me Reardon or Dagny. Like, really? I mean, I was 16. I hadn't done anything in my life. Why would I think I was Hank Reardon? I mean, Hank Reardon was a giant. He was this innovator. He was this incredible entrepreneur. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. I had no clue what I wanted to do. He had this love of metal and science and engineering. I didn't have that. I mean, and the same with Dagny. I couldn't relate, and certainly not Francisco, who's good at everything. I was not that. I mean, the only character I could relate to in Atlas Shrugged was Eddie Willis. And I loved Eddie, because I thought Eddie was me, right? And to still think so to some extent, right? I mean, I'm not a giant of industry. I'm not a giant innovator. I'm not a creator of a philosophy. I'm not a creator of, I'm a second, like I'm the Eddie Willis, right? I take Ayn Rand's ideas, Leonard Peikoff's ideas, Onkar, Gregg, and all those, and I popularize them. And yet, I don't want to dismiss what I do. I do it well, and I apply them in a way that's unique, and I apply them in ways that I don't think other people do, and I'm good at what I do, and I add a lot of value. So I'm not trying to dismiss that. But I'm not Ayn Rand, and I'm not Leonard Peikoff, and I'm not in this realm, in the realm of ideas, and I'm not Reardon or Dagny in the realm of business. I'm quite happy with what I am. Right? So, but if you're really, really convinced that you are you're going to be hugely successful, and maybe you read Atlas Shrugged after you're already hugely successful, then maybe maybe you skip over the morality. You don't see it as important. You're living in many respects. You're living this kind of self-interested life already. You're living the way you want to live. You have the resources now. You've created the resources. You're a moral hero by Ayn Rand standards. And you just don't see what the point of it all is. Now, you'd think that a hearing like this would get him to see the point of it, at least in one dimension. And the psychological impact it has on him would get him to see it. But no, this is the big mystery. And if anybody has a good answer to this, why does some people read Atlas Shrugged and just go, okay. Oh yeah, good book, but they don't get it. And why do other people, like me, like many of you, it rocks our world? It either confirms what our sense of life is and what we thought in some vague notion was, like some people, I know, or like me, it completely turns our world upside down and we reject everything we believed before and adapt this new idea. I don't know what psychologically and epistemologically makes the difference. I think it's a lot of psychology, and I think it's got to do with psychology, with self-esteem, but it's also got to do with altruism and how committed you are to it and why you're committed to it, which again I think is psychology. So I wish I had Ayn Rand to ask that question. I mean, I think she would also say something about intellectual honesty, how honest you are with yourself and how honest you are intellectually. But I don't know that, she had the same phenomena. She had all these businessmen who kind of got it, kind of admired her, but didn't really get it. Maybe Leonard Peikoff, or maybe somebody else knows. Maybe she wrote about it and I don't know. But why doesn't it go deeper? Why doesn't it go deeper? I don't know. I wish I did. Greg says that, Steve Jobs, according to, so Steve Jobs, there's a good footage of him responding to small fry politicians at local meetings. I don't know if he was ever called before Congress. I don't think he ever was called before Congress, but I do know that he hosted, for example, Bill Clinton, at his home in Silicon Valley. And I know somebody was at the dinner, and it was a small dinner, and Clinton was president at the time. And unfortunately, my recollection is vague, but from what I recall, Jobs had very little respect for politicians, very little respect for their ideas, for what they stood for. I think of all of them, of all these entrepreneurs, I think Jobs, I've seen videos of him talking about education and how, in a sense, education should be private and there should be marketing and advertising for different schools and those ideas that are pretty radical. And I have a feeling that Jobs maybe took Ayn Rand more seriously than others, and maybe it impacted him more, but I don't know. Of all of them, the person I would have most liked to have met and most liked to have known more about as a human being is Jobs. He strikes me as the most thoughtful of all of them. Now, granted, he also dabbled in mysticism, dabbled in Buddhism, dabbled in, killed himself basically by going on a juice diet instead of getting surgery and stuff like that. But he was also the most intellectual of them all and thoughtful. And I think some of Ayn Rand stuck with him is my suspicion. And Wozniak claims that Atlas Shrugged was a huge influence on Steve Jobs. We have no corroborating evidence, as far as I can tell. All right, let's see. I think Alex writes, I feel bad for Zuckerberg between this and Hollywood making the social network. He can't catch a break. By the way, some of the questions on the thing, one person asked Zuckerberg about whether the social network was an accurate depiction of what happened at Facebook. Again, what does that have to do with anything? One of them asked them, one of the Republicans said, Zuckerberg, you and the president have a lot in common. And you should have seen the expression on Zuckerberg's face, the right kind of expression, the horror of being thought of in the same breath as the president. And then another congressman asked him, do you want to comment on you and the president? And then he backtracked from that. It was a joke. The hearings were a joke. And just offensive. And then, of course, objectivists and others who think he's a communist or betrayer of everything, and it's a free market people who go after him. Break up Facebook. Zuckerberg is a socialist and he's evil and so on. I mean, it's just disgusting. And these are people, I mean, if you have that view, you don't understand Ayn Rand. And again, I've read from OPA, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff, about the value of productivity. Yeah, Zuckerberg is a moderate leftist. What else would you be in the world we live in today if you're not an objectivist? What are you going to be? By the way, I got a comment on the other day's video that I did on race in Harvard, and I said something about right-wing racist, and somebody said, well, there can't be any right-wing racist because racism is collectivist and collectivism is on the left. Let me make clear, I do not accept the definition that left is collectivist and right is individualism. I think that ship has sailed. If anybody used to hold that, if that had any validity once upon a time, and maybe it did, and maybe Ayn Rand, during Ayn Rand's period, that has no validity today. That is the idea that we should fight all the fights that we have over concepts. The concept we should fight most about is right versus left is ridiculous. Right describes Republicans and people of that ilk and moving further out towards greater collectivism from there. And the left describes socialism and moving out further out, or kind of progressives and socialists and everybody kind of associated with the Democratic Party and moving out further towards greater collectivism and nihilism from there. And both end up being collectivist. And the true political spectrum is collectivism versus individualism. You can be an individualist racist, but then let's abandon the use of right and left, because right and left plays into the hands of our enemies. Right and left is ambiguous. People don't understand what you're talking about. They associate with the current political attitudes. And the current political attitudes are right is collectivism, left is collectivism. So to me, the entire political spectrum today, to varying degrees, the middle tends to be less, the extremes tend to be more, are all collectivists, left and right. And we and a few others are different. We're not on the spectrum. We're on a different spectrum. We're in a third dimension, which is the dimension of individualism versus collectivism. So I'm an individualist. I am not on the right. Okay, what do you think of the Pixar movie Inside Out, specifically depiction of emotions and the dominant role they play in a person's volition? I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know. If I ever watch it, I'll comment on it. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if children's movies emphasized emotion over everything else, because ultimately that's what our educational system teaches. That's what's being emphasized in the culture. Do you know Edward Snowden was on Joe Rogan? Yes, I've listened to, again, 3 hours. Oh my God, I mean, who has time to listen to this stuff? I've listened to it. I was thinking of doing a show on it. I'm trying to find the kind of material I'd have something to say about it. I thought it was incredibly interesting, the bits that I've listened to, and good and interesting. I find Snowden to be unbelievably articulate and interesting, and somebody who has interesting things to say. So I might still do a show on the Snowden-Joe Rogan interview. I have to watch more of it to figure out what I would say, what I would comment on. I don't want to just play his video, but I recommend it. If you haven't seen Joe Rogan's interview with Edward Snowden, I recommend it. At least the portions I've seen have been really, really interesting in terms of what Snowden is saying. What does it even mean to break up a company like Facebook? Where does that kind of audacity come from? Well, it's the same audacity that came to breaking up Standard Oil, or breaking up IBM, or breaking up Alcoa, which were all attempts by the government to break up companies, some of them successful, some of them not. The attempt to break up Microsoft, although they didn't succeed in ultimately breaking up Microsoft, they only succeeded in crippling it for about 15 years. Breaking up would probably mean something like you can't have more than X number of subscribers, and just like banks can't have, no bank in the United States is allowed to have more than 10% of the deposits in the country. So you have to have a fragmented, or at least somewhat fragmented banking system. At the extreme, you could only have 10 banks in the U.S. You can't have less than that. I mean, you could have that for Facebook. You could say you can't have more than 100 million, and you decide which 100 million you want, and you have to dump the rest. The audacity comes from they think their job is to run our lives. They are rulers of the universe. They are little authoritarians, little dictators, little Stalins and Mussolinis who just want to run things, and they want to break things up if they want to, and they know it's not like they care. They just want to break it up because they want to break it up. Because you don't have enough LGBTQ employees. I mean, they're just despots. They're just authoritarians. And I mean, there are very few politicians in America today, in either party, who are either smart or who have, let's call it, good intentions. I think the better ones have left. I think the ones that still remain who might be marginally good are leaving. I just don't think we have a political system right now, and for many years, and I'm not, by the way, I'm not a Ron Paul fan, and I don't think we've had a political system for many, many years that has supported intellect, honesty, and curiosity, and respect for actually what the government should do, the protection of rights. I think the people who get elected to office today are a little nothings, who power-lusting nobodies. Right? Yeah, Greg says I don't know how they're going to break it up, because I think there are lots of different ways to break it up. But Greg says that what Elizabeth Warren is advocating for is splitting up Facebook, for example, from WhatsApp. So forcing them to split out WhatsApp and Instagram. I doubt that that's going to satisfy people. Because the fact is that the real power that Facebook has is on the Facebook platform, and they're going to have to find a mechanism to break that up. But I've seen proposals. I've seen some Republicans, not Democrats. Republicans suggest that Facebook needs to be broken up into lots of little Facebooks, and I don't know how you do that. But I suggested one. Another could be, I mean, who knows? Given the tribalism that exists today, it could be geography-based. Have different companies in different geographies do Facebook, and you can't cross-communicate. I mean, I did a show on this at some point, of what it would look like to break these companies up, and why, if you really broke them up, but you allowed a market to exist, they would just merge, because it's an economies of scale business. It's so obviously an economies of scale business. It's a business around networking. It's a business around, this is the barrier to entry. The barrier to entry is, unless you have X hundreds of millions of people on the platform, there's no incentive to join. You need scale in order to make sense to join. But yeah, I think there are going to be a variety of different plans. And one of them is what Warren is suggesting, which is spinning off WhatsApp and Instagram. But they're more than that. I've seen more than that. Your talk with, so this is a question, your talk with Sergio Sarmiento seemed to go very well. I didn't see him use any fallacies. Do you think he's someone who can help influence objectivism substantially? I mean, somebody who can help get objectivism out there and be influential. Yeah, I mean, I find that he is one of the lead TV hosts in Mexico, and he had me on his TV show, and I just put up the YouTube video of the interview. And yeah, I mean, I find that television hosts outside the United States are far more respectful, far more interested in objectivism, what Ayn Rand has to say, than American media. In America, we have this, people have this attitude towards Ayn Rand of, dismissive and without even reading or without really knowing, and it's this social black mark if you have anything to do with her. You don't get that in other countries, and it's one of the reasons I'm relatively optimistic about the ability of these ideas to spread in other countries. There's less resistance because they don't know her, so they haven't developed as much of the resistance. So yeah, I like that interview. It went well. If you saw the interview I did with Brazilian TV that I put up a few days ago, that went well. I've done stuff in Europe that has gone well. I mean, the worst are in the US and the UK. That's the worst interviews I'll be putting up some interviews I've done. I put up one from South Korea. I put other ones. I'll put up some other stuff I did in Asia. The interviews go well in these other countries. All right, here's another one on social networking. And then we're going to call it a night, so no more super chat. If an open standard for social networking was created, multiple companies could compete but still have access to large-scale total social networks. Fine. Start something like that. It's not the job of government. It's not something that can be forced. It's not something that the law should have anything to say about. If you want to create such a network, or if you want to convince Facebook to create such a network, then go do it. But it has to be done voluntarily. It has to be done through market forces, not through government forces, not with a gun, but through voluntary exchange and through voluntary decision makers of users and companies. All right, a more broad question about objectivism. Do you think a lot of people discover objectivism because they're suffering from depression and are looking for answers to bring them out of it? I mean, it wasn't how I discovered objectivism. I was not depressed, although I went through my depressed periods when I was young, but that was not why I discovered objectivism. I was a teenager. I think all teenagers go through periods of depression. Yes, I mean, I think there's something to that. I think generally objectivism appeals to many people who are searching. And you might be searching because you're depressed. You might be searching because you're intellectually curious. You might be searching because you know something's wrong in the world and the ideas you hear don't make any sense, and you're looking for the right answer. You might be searching because you've been an outsider your entire life. I talked about that a couple of days ago. You might be searching because you're different than everybody else and the conventional stuff just doesn't come together. I think there are a lot of reasons, but it's the search that unites most people that find objectivism. Because you have to find it. It's not just out there. It's not easy. You have to, either by chance or somehow, but you have to be open to it when you read it, which means you're searching. And unfortunately, because of that, some people develop objectivism as a crutch, as something, as an excuse to remain antisocial, as an excuse to be depressed. After all, I mean, after this show today, we should all be depressed because, I mean, Maxine Waters heads the House Finance Committee. I mean, can you think of a more depressing thing than that? And everything that represents about the culture we live in. And then nobody cares. That nobody's upset by that. Except a bunch of Republicans who are only upset by it because their tribe is not in charge. So people use objectivism to justify their depression. People use objectivism to justify their antisocial attitudes. People use the objectivism to justify their patriotism. And I think Donald Trump has forced people to show their true colors. One of the benefits of having Donald Trump is a lot of people who I thought were objectivists, turns out are not. It turns out they were kind of conservatives. They used Ayn Rand because she gave, an emotionally pleasing explanation, or maybe a cognitively pleasing explanation to justify certain of their values, but deep down, they were national conservatives. And as soon as the rubber hit the road, as soon as there was a conflict between their objectivist ideas and the conservative ideas, they went full throttle on the conservative. And I think a lot of people who use objectivism as a crutch to be depressed ultimately abandon objectivism and maybe embrace religion, or maybe embrace Jordan Peterson, who maybe give them what seems like a better out, or maybe they just stay depressed their whole lives. I think that's why there's a lot of movement out of objectivism. I think it's because people don't come into it for the right reasons and don't use it in the right way. It takes, and I've said this before, right? It takes a lot to integrate objectivism into your life. It takes a lot of honesty. It takes a lot of courage. And it takes a lot of studying. You really have to study the ideas. And I know a lot of you, and you come to this channel, maybe you've read a little bit of Rand, some of you haven't even read Rand. But, you come to this channel to get entertained and to get your dose of controversial stuff. But if you really want to take this seriously, you have to go study Ayn Rand. You have to go read her books, her fiction and her nonfiction, and you can't just do one of those. You have to do both. And I would say you have to read a book like OPA, Objectivism and the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff. And you have to take some of the courses, and you don't have to do it all at once. You can do this over 10 years. It's actually better to do it slowly. Every year, do something. Every year, do a few things, but do something. Because if you do it too quickly, I fear you don't have time to integrate it. You don't have time to make it part of your life. You don't have time to see all the connections that it has with the world out there. And then you hold it rationalistically, which means divorced from reality, divorced from facts, divorced from evidence. And one of the things Leonard Peikoff in particular teaches is how to integrate and the importance of integration. And you've got to integrate. It's the most important, once you have the tools, the certain philosophical knowledge, now you have to integrate it, and you have to bring it down to reality to see that it's true, to convince yourself, to prove to yourself every single day that objectivism is true. Leonard Peikoff used to talk about going on walks. Ayn Rand used to send him on walks. Just walk in the streets and see the connection between the things you observe and philosophical ideas. And I think we need to do that all the time because, and this is why I say it takes to really integrate objectivism into your life is a lot of work, and it never ends, and it's constant, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to say stupid things, and you're going to advocate for wrong ideas, and you're going to have floating ideas, and you're going to advocate for things that ultimately you're going to discover you didn't really understand. And every time I read an Ayn Rand essay, I discover new stuff in it. Every time I read an Ayn Rand essay, I'm shocked at how little I know, and how much she knows, and how much of a genius she was. And I'll say it again. The great tragedy of the 20th and 21st centuries is that the great minds, entrepreneurial minds, business minds, and intellectual minds, did not discover the genius of Ayn Rand. I mean, the real genius of Ayn Rand. Once, in my view, a millennial genius. A person that even after you study her ideas, when you go back to them 20, 30, 40 years later, you still discover how brilliant they are and how amazing they are. And that doesn't mean she never made mistakes. It doesn't mean that everything she wrote is absolutely right. It doesn't mean you have to agree with every comma and everything she said. But appreciate what she writes and how relevant it is to today. So I encourage you all to do that. I mean, again, these videos are cute, are nice, what I do. and hopefully important, and hopefully they expand the objectivist movement, and hopefully they change people's minds and they get more people interested. But at the end of the day, you have to go and discover them for yourself. Read for yourself. Study objectivism. Learn objectivism. And I'll tell you, you guys don't appreciate how easy it is for you. Because you today have everything online, everything's available. You can walk into any bookstore, you can go to Amazon, get everything. Not only those books, but you can get the books written about those books, the anthologies, the essays. You can get everything. And most of the essays, Ayn Rand's essays, the important ones are now online, free. All of Leonard Peikoff's courses online. When I discovered Ayn Rand, it took me forever to find other books. It was almost impossible to find anything I could find, I could pick up. I didn't know she was still alive. There was no internet. I was living in Israel. I didn't know there were other objectivists in the world. I didn't know there were other... it was impossible. And Leonard had not done his courses yet. There was no OPA yet. When OPA came out in 1991, it was amazing. And I'd already been studying objectivism for, 14 years. So it's all there. And don't tell me you don't have time, because you're on YouTube. And all you have to do is click on Ayn Rand Campus and get the Ayn Rand Campus app, download the Ayn Rand, I think it's called the Ayn Rand University app, and start listening. There is so much amazing content on objectivism today. That it's sad if you don't, for me, if you're not exploiting it to the fullest. All right, we've done now 35 minutes. 35 minutes more than I expected. All right, go do your homework. I've assigned you your homework. Go read Ayn Rand. Don't forget, if you get value from the show, to help support it, even if it's only $2 a month, I really appreciate that. YaronBrookShow.com/support or subscribestar.com/YaronBrookShow. And I will see you all on Sunday. And those of you who are coming to Atlanta, to the Ayn Rand conference in Atlanta, I look forward to seeing you there. Introduce yourselves. Bye, everybody. Talk to you soon.